When it dies, you just plug it in, and then when it dies, you just start adjusting.
There's a chair. Do you want me to grab your chair? No, I'll go get it.
Do I have to wear the mask while I'm presenting?
Yeah, you're gonna be on TV. I don't know, you do whichever you feel is comfortable.
My glasses start steaming up, I'm gonna take it off.
Yeah, it's not comfortable to wear a mask,
Good, Jesse, how are you?
especially when you're talking.
Huh? Anybody else want one?
Yeah, I'll take one.
Go on. How are you?
Yours is cute. Did you make that?
No, the insurer made it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a,
Yeah, that's cute.
I got three. Where
All
are
right,
you
I'll
going?
just go get one.
Well, there's
like the
three.
guys on
One, you were one.
Oh, okay.
And then she gave me a
You
kale.
don't have to deliver it.
All right, well, here.
Let me carry it for you.
I got one of them.
This is so funny with everybody. This is just so busy.
Hey, those stars are not social justice. That's right.
Stuff in that folder is break the note, right? And then,
Yes.
okay.
Good, for right now.
Here's the chair. Here's the chair.
Big people, you see some of the kids that want to
We're on camera, I think we go executive session.
I either have to wear my mask or my glasses, I can't do both.
They say if you.
Marcy, did you get a packet?
I saw in the news before, some Chinese big back to school, and they made 3 foot head thing. It sticks out 3 foot each side, so that they make sure they're
The
social
girl at
distance.
Peach's Deli told
And they
me.
wear them.
Yeah.
What happened to my,
They're 6 foot long and 3 foot
A little
out each
bit better,
side.
every once in a while.
I was like, oh my God.
Opposite, I don't get multiple.
And then I saw it, I just saw it, I was
He had to
watching
switch it, but
Yeah.
this one is too tight, I can't
60
do it.
Minutes the other night.
I also saw.
Making all that PPE and different things. Google has a watch that actually beeps if I get too close to them and records every person I'm around. And it can tell them who I've been around, if they have coronavirus, if
Vicky, you want a chair?
They're Chinese.
Oh, no, I'm good, thank you.
Sheree, you want a chair?
That was great.
oh, you can't?
They're gonna see the screen.
Oh,
Well, they see the back of your head right now, but it's close to the microphone.
yes.
They're gonna be able to see the screen.
Oh, yes,
can
and
see
some
more
other
main
kids,
screen,
boy, they
right?
all shot down.
Yeah,
Oh,
I like the
my
mask
God.
too, Marlene.
What?
I like the mask too.
Thank you, where are you?
It's right here. No, I'm doing the best I can. You threw all kinds of curveballs at me.
I did.
He said if you fold it like back and forth.
If anybody changed their mind, they want a chair, there's a couple here.
Going up, but I'm like, I don't know how comfortable I'll be. I'm like, maybe I'll try it.
Marlene, you want a regular chair?
No, I'm fine.
Gavin, you want a regular chair?
I'm good, thank you.
Of course.
Richie's here.
Hi, Rich.
Hello.
Bruce.
You're good. They see your screen.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Vicky, that works.
Hello.
Really?
How are you doing?
Like,
Good, how are
I'm
you?
eating normal and it's not going up at all because it's on staying down for the position. It doesn't look funny at it.
No, you can't even
I'm gonna
tell.
get started. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm gonna explain a little bit about how I wanted to set up this budget session. And if any of you have any questions at any time, just ask, interrupt me, no problem at all. I'm going to go through a lot of detail tonight. And my goal is for you to have all the detail you need to make sure when it comes time for you to approve the budget, you have all your questions answered. Because I know last year, I was new, I was only here a couple of months. It was sort of just, let's do what we did the year before, went through it. Where it's coming from, how we came up with them, so that you're comfortable with the budget. So if you have any questions, let me know. We are not complete with this budget. It's very preliminary. I'm going to first go through what the state has been giving us information on what's happening with our state funding, and you know we get most of our revenue from state funding. Go through a little bit about our subsidies, then get down deep into our costs, and when I talk about our costs, it's going to be everything but staffing and salaries for the time being. And then we'll go into executive session later, and we can talk about that in detail. A lot of items are firmed up, and there are some items that aren't, and I'll explain what is not firmed up when we get to it. So just interrupt me if you have any questions. Based on everything we hear from PASBO, which is the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officers, there's going to be a lot of financial stress on school districts because the mandated costs continue to grow. And what the mandated costs are three areas. It's special ed, the charter schools where the children are allowed to go to outside charter schools, and pension costs. So these items, which we have no control over, continue to grow. There's no additional state funding to keep pace with it, and we can only increase property taxes so much. So it's creating a problem on all the school districts. If you look at this chart, it's showing that this is just the mandated costs for the entire state of Pennsylvania. There's 500 school districts in Pennsylvania. And there's $4.67 billion in mandated costs that are allocated to all of us, but only $2.24 billion of money that they give us to pay for that. So as they legislate for charter schools and things like that, which we have no control over the costs that go out, there's no money there to pay for it, but we're required, you all know that, to pay for it. And it continues to grow every year. The governor's budget is not final. And if you look at the 25 largest appropriations that are in the governor's budget for this year, 5 of them are education. Actually more than that, but you can see there is an awful lot that the state does provide to education. The rest goes to like criminal justice, medical assistance, things like that. But you can see that there is an awful lot that they do budget for education. Again, this is the mandated cost, special education. There's a $1.2 billion increase across all the school districts. The charter school costs, tuition costs, we've had a $555 million increase. And the pension costs, we've had a $2.4 billion pension increase that we've had to pay for. Now, another area that it seems to have gotten out of control is our special education costs. And one of the items that they, if you look at this chart right here, what this chart is showing you is the number of special education teachers across the state. So if you look from the last 5 years, from 2013-14 till last year, There hasn't been that significant of a change in the number of special education teachers, 656 special education teachers. So across the school districts, the cyber charters, and the IUs, it's only, in 5-6 years, it's only increased 0.73%. That's the teaching in the school. But if you look down below, you will see, based on an individual's child's IEP, we are now, as a school, required to provide all these services to these children in special ed. And Nick, if you want to jump in here, you can help me. That keep increasing and increasing. For example, additional guidance services needed for emotionally disturbed children. Psychological services we're now providing in the school. Speech pathology and audiology, social work services, instruction and curriculum, legal and accounting services, medical services, a ton of nursing services, and student transportation costs to send them to special schools. Not counting all the special aids they may have. So these costs, when it has been determined that a child needs that, we have to provide it.
Arlene, what's the medical service?
Medical services, physical therapy, occupational therapy, a lot of psychological services, social work services.
It's what we pay for, we do it out of house,
We pay for it.
not done in-house.
Yes. Now, we also pay for a lot of outside services to come in. Like, we may not have a need for, I don't know how many full-time, say, occupational therapists, but we'll have children who need occupational therapy that...
All right, would autistic children fall under this medical service?
It would depend on their related services,
Yes.
Mr. Lana. It depends on if with that autistic classification, within that, they also had a related service. So you could be, have autistic support and not have occupational therapy, or it could be written into your IEP where you need some occupational therapy or physical therapy. So, or behavioral therapy, it could be in there. So it's case by case dependent. But yes, absolutely.
Well, I know you've got social work services, which that falls under a lot of that.
Yes.
And then you have medical services. To me, medical services means something medical. Social work services is something social.
Right. But we have to pay for all that.
Maybe Nick can clarify.
Nick can explain it better. Nick?
I'm not 100% sure what entails inside the medical services, but each student with an individualized education plan, we have to look at if there is a need for any type of medical services, and we must provide them.
We can also bill them. That's something new. In the last 5 years, I believe, I don't know how, at least 5 years, a couple of years, we have now started billing access, a couple of years, for some of the medical services that we are providing in the schools. So we do get a reimbursement for that, for some of them. And when the IU provides some of these medical services, because some of the services we provide, because they're through our own nurses, health aides, or whatever, we bill access for that. If there are medical services being provided through the IU will bill access for us, and then we can draw down on that money to help pay the IU bill. Does that make sense?
Is there any reason why whatever company's coming isn't billing access themselves?
Well, the IU is.
Yeah, but I mean,
Like Chestnut Ridge was, I believe. Nick, was Chestnut Ridge billing?
Should be social.
Billing for services?
Yes.
Yes, they were. But they were keeping they're keeping all the access funding. I know Chestnut Ridge did. But anyone we employ through the IU, we reimburse as a district.
Would Chestnut Ridge fall under social services?
that still falls under, yes, that's social services.
Is that bill 100% is what I guess I'm trying to ask? Is, say, Chestnut Ridge comes in and they bill us $100, are they billing Access and accepting the $100, or are they billing us if there's a lesser amount paid?
They're coming in for free, and that's how the counselors are being reimbursed. They're coming in and getting a full caseload, providing counseling, billing Access, and then being reimbursed through them. We do have a full-time social work mental health therapist that we hired at the beginning of the year for $75,000. And she has the ability, she bills Access, and our district is reimbursed that money. And she's the only one.
So the bill you're talking about is basically a wash for the district.
It depends, Dave, it's a lot more complicated than that, but yeah. I haven't completed that portion of the budget yet, but a lot of it is reimbursable. I would say between the IDEA funds and the Access funds that we receive, it pays our IU bill for us. So we have not had to cut many checks to the IU. It's a paper entry where we record the grant coming in, but they help administer the money. And then I will write to them and say, okay, your bill for this month is $200,000. Please pay for that from our Access funds. So it's more complicated than just writing checks back and forth to each other. There's pots of money, different places, have to know where they are, have to know how to draw it down. And then there's different people. There's different people billing. You have IU billing Access. You have our payroll people billing Access for our aides and some of our nurses, and then you have, I think, Nick's assisted billing Access also. Possibly. Nick, does Kathy do any billing, or does Kelly do it all?
Kelly Porterfield.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kelly does it all for us, yeah. We handle it through payroll.
I was just trying to figure if we were direct or was a third-party billing or how that was working.
We directly bill it. We do it.
Marlene,
Yes.
when Kevin asked about medical services, I really didn't understand. I didn't get any answer from you. You said psychological could be in there, or psychological separate.
Psychological separate. I'll give you an example
So
of
give
a
me some
medical.
service example.
If we would have a child who has to have a nurse with them all day because if they have a seizure or something, they could die if you don't administer a shot right away or something like that, we have to pay for a full-time nurse to be with that child. Back and forth on the bus maybe only, and maybe we don't need it at school, but I know that we pay for a nurse for one child. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick. I'm not the
I think,
specialist.
is that under nursing services? I think we're thinking like, hearing support,
I'm wondering how many times.
interpreters and medical, because
Instruction.
I'm not 100% sure where that 5.8 million is coming from. I know the nursing, when I pay a lot of the bills, we get continuum interim maximum for nursing services, and that would fall under all that, including anything that the student would need, like go to the nurse to influence jobs, whatever the case may be, medical-wise. I don't know if that's covered under medical or
So what is covered under medical services? Still don't have an answer.
Keep in mind, these aren't my books. We pay for these people and then we get the money. I don't care how they classify it. I don't, this is from the state. Yeah, this is from the state. This isn't ours, Marcy. So if I have 3 nurses in, say, an elementary school, and we can bill Access for that, for their services, I don't care if it's psychological, medical, physical therapy, OT, they know how to bill what they're supposed to bill. I'm not a billing expert, I'm sorry, I just don't know that. But it does get billed and we do get reimbursed. It will come into us through federal revenue. That's considered federal revenue. And our payments would be part of our special ed costs. But we don't classify them as medical, occupational therapy. we either classify them as our employee costs or an outside service contract provider.
Well, Marlene, I'm not too knowledgeable at all about this, but when you've got almost half of your budget going out to medical expenses, and it's showing that on our budget, almost half of it, 40%.
Now this
If we don't see an income loss for that,
This is off the state for everything, Mr. Lake.
this is the total special education cost, right?
Across the state.
across the state. I'm just giving you an example how it's.
This isn't ours.
No, no.
Sorry, that I'll look at that as well.
40% of the change.
That's more than reflected.
I'm just trying to show you how much it's increasing across everybody. It's not just us. It's a mandated cost that we have to pay. Let me go to the next slide. This will explain a little bit better also. Each child who is in special education is categorized by category 1, 2, or 3, 3 and 4 combined, but it's based on whether you have to spend up to $25,884 to educate them, $25,000 to $51,700, $51,000 to $77,000, and any child over $77,000. There are some children that we do spend that much money for to educate one child. So if you figure a typical regular education child, we estimate about $10,000 per kid to educate. We have some kids that are $77,000. It's not unusual at all. So we categorize them, and there's something called an Act 16 report that the Special Education Department prepares that details all the costs out that we spend on special ed. They allocate it down per child, and that's how they determine our special ed subsidy funding that we get back from the state, based on all the individual costs. So we do not do that in the business office. It's a lot of accounting, and we meet with Mr. D'Amico on that and look at it, but they're preparing those reports to the state. So there's a lot involved in that. Again, this is just showing you the different changes in all the special ed. That's one mandated cost. So our special ed goes up. The second chart that I'd like to show you is the charter school tuition cost. So if my child wanted to go to a charter school for the performing arts and it's in Pittsburgh, we would have to pay for it, or wherever it is. And they charge what they want to charge, and we have to pay it to them. So that's why it was really important for us to get our cyber school up and running, because we had more and more children electing to attend outside charter schools at a tremendous cost. And we can do it in-house better and cheaper.
Just Marlene, the regardless of the charter school, whether it's performing arts or cyber or, you nailed it. Absolutely, they have the right to attend. The amount is different for every school district, not the charter school. It's based on your per pupil expenses.
Right.
So ours, regardless of the charter school, whether it's that performing arts or whether it's a cyber charter or whether it's another type of order like the Naval Charter School in Philadelphia, whatever, your child gets the opportunity and the right to go. The amount we send is different than every other district in the Commonwealth. Our amount for a special education student is $24,000, give or take, and $11,000 for a general education student. So what we find in the cyber world, and this is documented, what we find in the cyber world is they go in as a general education student, and within 6 months they're identified as special education. So they change from the $11,000 rate to the $24,000 rate. So our cyber, we're at about $5,000 a child, roughly $5,000 a child. So regardless of whether it's special ed or, that's where we're at. So I just wanted to, that was a good point, Marlene. Thank you.
Okay. So we're continuing to pay money out to charter schools. That's our second mandated cost. And our third mandated cost is our PSERS, which you all know. And it's going up this year from 34.29% to 34.51%.
Hey, before you leave cyber, Marlene,
Yes.
did anybody sign up since we closed schools, you know? In like PA cyber?
Who put up a sign? Did we?
No, I said, did any students sign up for PA cyber since we closed schools?
Oh, I don't know that.
You know,
So
I agree, my homeschool too, I heard there was kids signing up to be homeschooled.
So, Mr. Omatic, the state and PDE actually gave us very specific directives on that the cyber charter schools starting on March 13th can only submit tuition for current students on March 13th. So, if we do have an enrollment, we don't pay for that enrollment. Their goal, and I can't speak for them, but my thought on their goal is that they want to prove to those students that we'll eat that, we'll bite that, and then we will want you to stay for the 2021 school year. So they can't bill us, and we are doing accurate, record keeping on. We are accepting new students, and we have to determine how many we lost and whether they were to cyber or they moved out of our district. Homeschool, you lose an ADM, but you don't pay anything for the homeschool. So you're absolutely right. We lose an average daily membership, but we do not lose, we don't pay the homeschool family anything. They take on that responsibility because of values and whatever the case may be. But we only use an ADM, but we don't lose any actual
Once they
funding.
go into homeschool, so we'll lose that money as far as reimbursement from the state.
The ADM, correct. You're 100% right. Yep.
Yep.
Thank you. Did that answer your question? Mr.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And what we have to be very cautious of, and we have spoken through all of our, our business department, is that when they get the bill from one of the 14 cyber charters, they have to be very specific on when their enrollment date was. Because they are permitted by law to allow an enrollee, but they can't charge for any enrollees past March 13th. Thank you. Thanks, Marlon.
Okay. I wanted to talk about our basic subsidy from the state. We receive a huge subsidy from the state, but the way we are allocated that money is based on a huge formula the state uses. It uses 3 different poverty weights, a charter school weight, the sparsity and size of your district as a weight, your median household income as a weight, your local effort as a weight, ELL weight, I think that's English language learning as a
Correct.
rate.
Correct.
So there's all these things, and you can look at it here again, it's a different way to look at the formula where they take 3-year average of our school's daily membership and they have these student-specific weights, poverty, ELL, charter, and then we get a weighted district average daily membership. So it's based on all those things. Then they take that weighted district average daily membership and they have other factors such as the sparsity, MH11, that might be, I don't know what they are, off the top of my head I forget, but there's different weights such as your market value aid ratio for the market value of the housing in the area. And when you come down to it, it provides you with an ADM which they use to calculate how much money you get. So the point of me showing you all this is it's just like when you say, well, how much money are we going to get? It's not that easy to say, oh, we're going to get this much back if we spend this much money, because we can give you a range and it's usually this based on history, but this year we had a problem because when they calculate these poverty rates, which they use to calculate our funding, they use data from the 2018 census. And it's based on, again, acute poverty, concentrated poverty, and moderate poverty. Well, when they did that, and they did it throughout the state, this next slide will show you that for this year, there were 14 school districts who were removed from the acute poverty. There were 7 who were added to it. 42 are now included in it. There are now 42 people, and there's 458 districts out of the 500 that are excluded. Which basically means if you were one of the 42 districts who, for some reason, all those ratios lined up, you got an extra allocation for being in low poverty. Well, we always did. However, this year, for next year's budget, if you look, we are no longer qualified for that. We are one of the districts, and if you look, there's some of our surrounding districts in this area. They all happen to be around us that fell off that poverty cliff, is what they call it. So what does that all mean for us? That means basically we lost $247,000 worth of funding. Now usually if our state funding is X amount of dollars, the last couple of years we were getting about 1.5% increase in our subsidy every year to help offset our increases in operating costs. Now it's decreased. Instead of our subsidy percentage increasing every year, we decreased. And if you remember last year when I was giving you a budget presentation, and I took the budget and I tried to project it out a couple of years, 2-3 years. For this year coming up, I thought we would have about an additional $400,000 coming in for our state subsidy. But instead of that, it's a negative 247, so it made a significant impact on that projection I showed you last year, which no one expected it because it's based on this, formula that is very hard to calculate. On these poverty rates that are only based on census data that are given, I don't know how often the census data comes out, but that's specifically what happened. So it doesn't look good. The special education formula, I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's even more complicated on how they come up with how they fund our special education subsidy. And it's all these student weights and counts and district totals, and they do a equalized millage multiplier, a market value, personal aid, income ratio, like all of this comes down to how much money we'll get out of the budget. And for special ed, it's a dynamic formula, which means that the amount a district will receive in special education each year can go up or down. You could receive significantly more in one year than the prior year, or you could receive less. It all depends on those number of students and those categories I showed you on how each of our students fall into the category 1, 2, or 3 on their needs. And that is driven off of our Act 16 report that the special ed department has to prepare every year and submit to the state. So that Act 16 report, it's very important that that's accurate, and we account for all the costs in that report.
Marlene, just if this is a good point, that I had an opportunity, as Marlene presented that, and as she worked on it, I had an opportunity on page 13, on slide 13, if you want to go back to 13, I can tell us what those are. That's your median household income index and your local effort index. So, that's what your valuation of your homes and things like that. I just want to get those acronyms. There's a billion acronyms in education, and I wanted to give those to you.
Thank you for that.
Yep, thank you.
Yes. I'm still learning not to get them all. There's too many.
Marlene, before you go further, back on slide 10, if we come back to 13, under features, I don't see here the state reimbursement in the list.
The state reimbursement is based on our market value aid ratio. That has gone down each year also, but the percentage of PSERs that we pay is going up. So as we have to pay more, what we get reimbursed is going down every year.
But we are getting reimbursed a portion of what our employee payout is.
Yes, we do.
Okay, and it
We
used to
get
be
it
around
that
50%.
and Social Security, and they're changing the way as of last year. The Social Security, I don't think the PSERS, but it's now being, they changed these formulas. It's included in the basic subsidy now and not separate. We used to get a separate deposit for our Social Security. We're not getting that. I think we still do for PSERS, don't we? We still do for PSERS, but they changed it now, so it makes it.
It's a little over 50%. If you don't mind, I'll say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So any employee hired, it's a report that we have to do. Any employee hired before, I think it's 1993 or 94, is calculated at the 50%. Anyone hired after that, it's at that market aid ratio value. And that is the rate, what she was saying, when it goes down every year. It was around 67 point something last year. It's 66 point something this year. That cent has been falling the last couple of years, but so it's a calculation. So some employees are reimbursed at 50%, some employees are reimbursed at that 66%. Okay?
Our cost. Our cost, not the employee's cost. They don't get
Of
reimbursed.
our cost, that 34% we pay, we get that percentage back for
Right,
a
the
subsidy.
majority of the employees is over that 92 or 93 time base.
Yes, more and more
We have very
employees
few.
are at the
And
66%
the more
now.
we have, the higher it is, because otherwise it'd be based at 50.
This is
Coming
like
down to
last
60,
year,
but
we
still.
had a minimum, it looks like it starts going up, creeping up a little couple points every year after this year. It goes up a little bit more than it did the last 2 years. We were 0.3, now we're going to be at least 0.5, 0.6 now every year after this year.
Okay, now, this slide is showing you, based on that big formula for special ed, we received an estimate from PASBO what they think our special ed funding is going to be. And there's only a difference of $62,878 from last year to this year, although positive it did increase. but not much. A couple items I just want to mention. In the governor's budget, they still have in there, and the budget isn't final, so you never know what can slip in until the budget is approved. He still has the $45,000 minimum teacher salary in there. So it's back, but last year he proposed a subsidy to help us offset that cost. If you remember, if it passed in the budget, this year there's no a subsidy for them to help pay for any additional costs if we would hire new teachers at that rate. So it's there. I didn't build it into the budget yet, but just so you know, if it passes, it will affect all our new teachers going forward. There's also in the budget a minimum wage increase, which I did not build into our budget yet. I'm not sure how much it would affect our employees, but the minimum wage under his new budget is to go up to on July 1st. It could have some impact on our substitutes, our aides. Transportation. That's a whole topic I'm going to talk about later. As far as the subsidy goes, it's level funded. There's no increase. So if our transportation costs increase, we're definitely going to get a smaller portion reimbursed because they did not increase any funding for transportation. And I won't even go into the whole COVID thing in this year. That's another whole, we could talk an hour on that. But just so you know, they are continuing to not put money into transportation. It's been level funded.
I know last year, I think if I remember, Transportation Committee correctly, there was a clause in there in case fuel went too high, that it could be talked about, negotiated. Is there anything in there that went too low, or went
I don't know if that made it in the contract or not, do you remember?
Mr. Evans is online. He may be able to
Mr.
recall the
Evans, do you know that?
specifics.
Now, if you recall, when we looked into it, the only thing that you could find is fuel escalation type of clauses. They really couldn't find any history of fuel de-escalation anywhere throughout the state PD.
It's there now.
There now, I know. Okay, what this, again, I'm trying to give you an overview on what's happening at the state level because it really impacts our budget a lot when it comes to revenue. What this is showing you, when the subsidies are allocated to us, we get them paid over certain dates. Each subsidy is paid to us at different dates. At the end of June 30th, you can see what this chart is showing you, that our subsidy for that fiscal year has not been paid. They are slowly pushing back when they pay us into the next fiscal year so that you can see that every year it's increasing how much they owe us at June 30th for all the costs we've already spent for that year. We have already heard, and there's all kind of chatter going on my daily emails I get from what's happening at the state, that's saying our subsidy that we typically get, which is $8 million,
Between 8 and 9. yeah.
between $8 and $9 million, part of our subsidy we get in June, June 1st, to help get us through for the summer, may not get paid till August, September. Now, if that happens, then we're going to have to be talking about a bridge loan, because it's one thing to get a tax anticipation loan for next year till we just start getting our tax money in that we approved at the last board meeting, but it's a whole different subject when we're not getting money for what we spent last year and it's being held up for months. And I don't know how that's going to shake out, but we're going to know pretty soon. So that's going to be a discussion we'll have at a later date when I know more. But right now, they're talking about, especially with all the COVID costs the state's paying out and everything that's going on that's up in the air, it's almost like hourly we're getting emails of what's happening. And as of right now, the latest is we may not be getting our money when we should. And we plan on that. That's important to me for cash flow purposes, because we have to pay all our bills, obviously. And that just throws a whole nother wrinkle into cash management. So, just so you know that. So what does that all mean? It means that the funding shortfall is going to continue to grow in all the areas. Last fiscal year's June payment was not sufficient to meet formula requirements. There was up to 20% deficiency that was paid this year for the prior year. And the continued shortfall may mean that we're going to not even get our June payment until later. It also means that the planned con reimbursements for any construction projects we may have, that still has not been funded. And there are some badly needed construction projects needed across the state.
And what, you know offhand, Marlene, what our planned on reimbursement rate is a year?
I don't know that. That's one of the things I don't know. For our old bond payments, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know that, and the reason why I don't know that is because Dan Solomon did it last year, and he gave it to Kelly to do and showed Kelly how to do it. Well, she's kind of lost without him, and I have Kathy Rupert working on that. And Kathy's been working, trying to get the reimbursement for this year, and part of the problem is you have to go on a state website now. It's all online, and that's where Kelly was kind of held up. It was all online. You have to go in, you have to put down the payments you made. You have to have those payments verified by U.S. Bank, our bond trustee. So there were all these steps we had to go to get US Bank to verify it to the state, and then we have to go on a website and then put it online to get the reimbursement. Well, a couple of our bond issuances are not on our website. They're missing, and we don't know why. So we have a phone call into John McShane that it's just not easy trying to get that money. You would think it'd be easy. We've been doing it year after year, but it was fine when it was all paper. You filled out this form every time you made a payment and sent it in, you get it. Well, of course, the state switched, and now you couldn't even find our bond schedule on the state website. They should have all been there. So I have Kathy on that, and Kathy's been really, in the last month, made a lot of headway getting US Bank to approve it, meeting with the state, calling the state to try to get it on the website. So that's a long explanation, but which also means the revenue that we were supposed to get this year, we haven't received it yet.
Right.
And
It's supposed to be around 400,000.
around 400,000. We haven't received it yet, but we will. She's working on getting it. Advocacy is important. I plan on meeting with our senator in the next couple of weeks because I'm not sure they really understand what's happening to school districts, and I wanted to talk to them. The mandated costs are rising faster than the state funding increases. They are trying to take everything off the state and make it local. And they have pretty much told us in the PASBO meetings that you're going to have property tax increases every year. They want the local municipalities to step up and pay for their share of the school districts. They don't want it to be through the state anymore. So it's going to be tougher and tougher when they keep reducing it. It's going to be tough. If they have charter school reform, which we're trying to get passed, that will bring us some relief, but we're not sure when that's going to happen. If you remember,
How's that bill going?
Pardon?
How's that bill going? It was supposed to be passed about 6 months ago. How's it doing?
I don't know.
It keeps having legs, and we joined in much pat on the back to this board. You voted to have that resolution against charter school funding, so we were one of many school districts across the 500. It's in the percentage of school districts that passed a very similar resolution is
It's in committee, isn't it?
I have to check on the whereabouts of that bill, but it keeps having legs. It comes up in a different form. I know that Representative Turzai and others, keep bringing it light. So yes.
Okay. So we have level funding on the transportation. They cut the funding for school safety and security grants that we would apply for and get our grants every year. They're starting to cut the grants for safety and security. And we really feel they need to increase because they'll mandate special training and everything for our men, but yet there's no money there to pay for it. The state funding, again, for Plan Con is critical. People can't get involved in much needed construction projects without the Plan Con in place. And because of the lack of Plan Con and school safety funding, it's driving up property tax increases across the state. So that's why they're recommending to us that we advocate and meet with our state representatives and senators and talk to them about it. Federal education budget, I'm not going to get into that, but our share of title money next year is decreased also by $216,000? 33,000. Just so you know that.
You told us $1 million on 2 pages.
What's that?
You've given us $1 million on 2 pages.
I know. So it's really important you understand everybody from, the superintendent to the board to teachers, everybody understands the pressure that the school districts are under and what our costs are. So that's why I want to be very transparent to all of you so you can see, you know, really what's happening out there and why it's happening. And before I show you the numbers of where we are, I want to explain what's in the budget and what's not in the budget. So before I go into that, is there any questions that you have on anything I've presented so far on the state funding for us? Okay. So far, what is in this budget? Now, just so you know how I do a budget, and I'm sure it's like how you do a household budget or whatever, this is obviously just a lot bigger, is you obviously have to take it in pieces. And what's our debt payments? What's our salary payments? What's this? So there are some pieces that are really firm, and there are other pieces we have just not got to yet, mainly due to we've been dealing with this COVID thing for the last couple of months. So it's put us a little bit behind, but I'm not too concerned because we still have 2 months. But we have a decrease in local revenues of $1.5 million due to the COVID shutdown. That's what we anticipate for next year. That's due to people being unemployed, so no earned income tax, property tax being delayed or not paid to us timely, or not being paid at all, and some real estate transfer tax. So it comes to about $1.5 million. Our decrease in state subsidy of $247,000. Our transportation, if everything works out, should be level. That's another discussion. Again, I said the subsidy next year with our shutdown is, we're still working on that with Mr. Witt and with Mr. Evans. So we think it should be level though. The contractual raises for all groups in the collective bargaining agreements are between 3 and 3.5%. Our anticipated health insurance increases, we were really happy. Our medical insurance only went up 3.5%. We were preliminarily told a 9% increase. And it was only 3.5. Our dental and vision are 6 or 7, but we don't pay a lot for that. So that it sounds like a big percentage, but we don't pay a lot for that coverage. Again, our PISA rate increased. We still continue to make the bond payments. That's in the budget. Those are correct. ABM payment of $1.7 million is in the budget. And most of all the schools and departments' budget are final. Not final, but they're pretty well done.
Where are they?
I'm going to give them to you later.
No, I mean, same place last year, a little bit more, a little bit less?
If you take out salaries,
Yeah, just-
most of it's been a little bit less. We tried to cut it out. And one of the things I did is, everybody prepares budgets differently, and a lot of times you'll round up. Oh, I think salaries are going to be $1 million, let's make it $1.1 million. So you have a little slack in each line item. We took everything out, everything, okay? But last year we had a $100,000 contingency, which isn't much because there was slack in the budget in some places. I increased our contingency to $300,000, but every line item is what I think we're going to spend and what we need. Not what we want, but what we need to do.
Well, we spent last year's contingency also, correct?
Not all of it.
We're about half.
I thought at one point they had moved like 133,000 they were fishing for.
No. We might have budget transferred
Not out
something else.
we might have transferred it within that department, but it didn't come out of contingency.
Okay.
Most of the contingency money that we've used has been grants that we've gotten, such as Falcon Foundation, and a couple other smaller grants, and we've taken, so the expenditure side of it, we take the money out of contingency and put it into that grant expenditure line item.
I just thought at one point we figured grant in and then we used that money twice.
No, we didn't. I'll go back and look for it, Dave, but no, I don't think. We can go into detail later, but I don't think so. I'll show you.
Marlene, before you move on to that slide, unless you're not, are you finished
Pardon?
with that slide?
I can't hear you.
Are you finished with that slide?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to else say is we've taken all the salaries and we rolled forwarded the entire salary steps and everything. That is all done also. We'll get into staffing later in executive session, but all the salary increases per their contract is in this budget also.
The only thing that's not done is administrative.
Correct.
It'll
Correct.
be added in for next year.
I'll give you that in executive session too. I have that all written for you.
So, I mean, we haven't did anything with that.
No, you haven't done anything with that, that's correct, but everything else is done, or the confidential secretaries have not been done. And
Marlene, my question
technology.
would be on bullet point number 1, total decrease in local revenue. And you said that the state is encouraging us to have a greater local to contribute. How does that fare when there's a possible freeze on having an increase statewide? Are they taking that calculation out of the calculation?
Well, that was all before COVID. Now the freeze is due to COVID because of everything else that's happening. So on one hand, all that PASBO slides and all that state update I gave you was from like a month ago, and it's all kind of slightly changed. So who would have thought they might propose property tax freeze? So we don't know what's going to happen. The latest I heard is that may not pass, because a lot of school districts are going crazy right now, obviously. So I'm not sure if that will pass or not.
Well, if it does, then I think we need to lobby to have that formula adjusted.
What adjustment?
We need to adjust the formula that's based on local increasing the local taxation then for our subsidy. Because if we're not permitted to do it, which I'm fine with that, then how can we be penalized because we didn't do it when a law from Harrisburg says we can't?
You're right.
Okay.
You're exactly right. So I'm not sure how that's going to come out.
Thank you.
What is not in this budget? So when you see these figures, these items have not been complete. I haven't had a chance to look at these areas because we ripped the budget apart from zero and we build it back up. And we just have not had time. There's too many pieces. I think we have 10,000 accounts to look at. So the bond reimbursement revenue, we probably put in there what we were expecting to get this year, but I don't know what it is yet because we're still working with the state website trying to get the money for that. So, but that's not built into the budget yet. Our cyber program is not complete in the budget yet. We're still working on that. Our outside cyber program, the outside special ed is the big area, our placements that are not in the budget yet. We only have in there what we had last year, and I think it is wrong. And so I've already met with Mr. D'Amico at least 2 or 3 times, but we have to go through it again in detail because any other year when they talked about the outside placements that you have, they all have to be put in my books based on specifically what they are. You know, learning support, autistic support. There's a number of places where that can go in a general ledger. And based on what we spent last year and what we budgeted, it doesn't match. Now, the state changes sometimes where you put things in one category and another category. Like this year, we spent, as Cherie did, like a day switching, was it security or
The salary account.
salary accounts for all the different people to a whole different account because that's where the state wanted it placed. And it affected 50 employees. And every single benefit or cost we provide to them. And it took days to figure out what they were and then to reclass it out. So sometimes the state does that for us, and it's very hard to look across this line. Like, you would think that would be easy. What are our outplacements? Look on this line for special ed for autistic children. What would it be each year? Well, you can't go across the line on a budget report very easily because they've switched the budget code to where it should be made. So it's somewhere else, and now we have to rebuild our reports to do it. So special ed is very detailed, and I want to make sure, Mr. D'Amico's new, I'm new. I want to make sure when we're done that we know exactly where every dime is and it's put in the right bucket. So that's why it's taking longer than necessary. We're self-insured for unemployment compensation since the Federal CARES Act grants everybody 12 weeks of family aid, I think now, and 2 extra weeks of sick time if they get COVID. I have no idea if that's going to impact my budget for next year or not, so that's not in there. I do not have any contingency in there for any lawsuits or any increase for our fund reserve balance at this point.
Marlene, what's outside tuition cost?
We have to pay, besides the special ed, we have some children that are court-placed in special schools, or they're in Adelphi for behavioral issues, or any more.
I was thinking, is that,
Those are the main ones.
I was thinking, is that the same thing as the outside cyber program?
No.
Okay.
You said we're self-insured for unemployment.
Yes.
Nobody was unemployed, then why are we going to have an increase?
Pardon?
We had no unemployment, so why are we going to have an increase if we're self-insured?
Or subs. Or subs. And these people taking the leave, if they're entitled to the leave, that we have some 60 employees right now taking leave because they're allowed, if they qualify. For example, if I was an aide and I had a young child at home who can't go to school and I don't have a babysitter, they can get paid and stay at home.
Right.
So
are you saying that any other year we don't have any?
not many, because we usually don't furlough anybody. The one year where you had, years ago, I don't know how many years it's been now, but it's been like 6 years at least, I think, where you furloughed 40 employees or something like that. You had it that year.
2015 was the only year we ever furloughed and didn't qualify.
Okay, that was the year. Okay, so that was 5 years ago. So
You're just figuring a number and putting it back in your fund.
Pardon?
You're just figuring your number you spent and putting it back in your fund.
Yes.
You're self-insured.
Yes. So we have to pay it. When we get a bill, when they collect their unemployment, we get a bill from our unemployment, it's our insurance carrier, and we pay them for it. That's our premium. Like, instead of paying like unemployment insurance on every employee, which can be a lot of money, we were only paying a small administrative fee and then reimbursing the insurance company for the unemployment.
So we have insurance for unemployment. We don't actually take the money out for each employee and put it in our own fund.
Correct.
Okay, so we're not
We're self-insured. We have to pay for the
We're insured to have unemployment. We're not really self-insured.
We pay for it ourselves.
Right.
That means if they collect it, we pay for it.
They collect the entire amount, or we pay them insurance to have unemployment. I don't understand why anybody would collect it if we paid it ourselves. We would just put it in an account.
We don't put it in an account. We don't put it in an account. We don't pay it. So there may be no cost until somebody goes on unemployment, and then the insurance carrier will pay them, and we have to reimburse the insurance company for the exact cost. It saved us a lot of money.
We're paying them for an administrative fee to handle our money?
If we do, it's not a lot.
They handle out any of the unemployment like claims. They handle like the hearings.
They go to the hearings for us. They have lawyers that go. We don't have to do that. We go, but they have lawyers who...
It's a very small amount we pay every year because we normally don't have a whole lot of money.
We normally don't have it. We normally do not pay it because we don't have anyone on unemployment.
I'm just trying to figure if we're really self-insured.
Yeah, because typically, a company would pay a certain percentage on the payroll.
To the state or to whoever you do it through, but if we do it to ourselves and we keep it in a line item and a budget and,
We
an
don't
account.
pay, we don't budget for that unless we have to pay somebody on the
Right, but I'm saying, do we have an account that keeps that money for every employee in the district?
Our general fund, we just don't pay it to the insurance company, we don't pay it to the state. We don't pay.
And I don't think we can be I don't think we're self-insured. If you're self-insured, like say West Penn, they pay their insurance, they keep the money in an account, and if they have a problem, they pay it.
You're not the railroad.
Yeah.
Or the railroad. I think we might pay the insurance company and they bond us, it sounds like for unemployment. I'm just guessing from what you're saying.
I think where you're getting confused is, we do not front the money to the insurance company. It's not sitting there, it's sitting in our general fund. So our money, we have the use of that money until we pay it.
So can you tell me then today how much our unemployment compensation fund is in the general budget?
We don't have a fund for unemployment. We pay the costs as we
You
go.
just told me it's in the general budget.
I said we pay the costs as we go.
And that has to mean we're
So
insured.
the distinction there is it's a line item in the budget versus a fund that's actually separately set aside. We don't have a
Yes.
fund that's set aside,
We don't
but
have
we have
a
an
fund.
amount in the budget up to a certain amount to be spent from the general fund if we have a claim.
Now, if we have a claim,
So
we
it
pay
sounds to
the
me that they probably carry it for us and charge us a percentage if we do have something, or charge us a minimal administration fee through the year.
Yeah, it sounds like, I don't know, because I haven't seen this, but it's probably, they administer our unemployment compensation, so if we would get a claim. they
They're the
process that
administrator of our
claim
fund.
And handle that.
Right,
And
so
then-
we're not really,
And then we get a bill for whatever the, amount of the unemployment compensation we do.
Paid up front.
so technically if everybody would have been laid off this year, we would have had an astronomical bill we would have paid them, because they don't have our money sitting there.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Makes sense? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, here we go. Our revenues are projected to decrease 1%, and that is only because we have a 1.8% special federal state pass-through for that CARES Act for COVID that I have in this budget. So the revenues would have been down another 1.8 million more without that. So our revenues are projected to be 75,255,000, and our expenses this year, so far without everything else I told you in there, I still think we're high on special ed. We can cut some costs in there, and cyber I know we're high. But right now, our expenditures are at $77,971,488, which is a 2.6% increase over last year. And that includes every line item at actual and a $300,000 contingency rate.
But you said the one you just went through before, you said you really didn't have that on the budget, you just put it on the same as it was last year? The
Same as
pay break
last
for
year. We put just a number in there until we know what it is. We put the
Okay.
same as last year.
Same as last year, you put in, you
Yeah.
could go up or could decrease.
Exactly.
So you're suggesting that these items, the slide before, are where we need to delve in very deeply?
Yes.
Any idea what our savings are since March 13th?
Yes. I'll get into that in a minute. Okay, let's go through the revenues again. You can see our local revenue went down 1.6 million based on a projection. I'll show you something neat later with that, but that's again earned income tax mainly and property tax. The state actually is going up by 1.3, but that's only because we have that 1.8 million special grant in there. Our federal's going down 186,000, And our other income, we projected the sale of Clifford Pritz in there last year. We don't have that this year, so that's what made it come down. So our revenues are going down $687,000. Again, this is very preliminary. It's only the end of April, so I don't want you.
Does that include the 247 that we're going to lose for not being into poverty?
Yes.
And I think there was didn't that make a $400,000, so it ended up
Yes.
being a $650,000.
Yes, that
difference.
includes that. Includes that. Okay. I'm going to show the expenditures instead of showing it to you by, you know, like admin and teachers and all that. I'm going to show it to you by object. When we get into another budget meeting later, I'll break it down in different categories and go into more detail. But these are the main categories: the salaries, the benefits. You can see that, and if you look at the supplies and utilities, the property and equipment and financing, the financing is our debt. The main item, purchase services, that went up $1.3 million. Again, that's that outside tuition and outside placement for special education costs. We have no control over that. So if you look at the budget of what we can control, like, you know, like we can pick apart and say, let's save money here, save money there. It's really only the 600 line and 700 line, unless you want to talk about raises built into contracts or furloughing people across the board. There's only about little over $3 million on a $77 million budget that we can control. And that $3 million you pretty much need. That's bare bones. So there's no way to cut much costs out of here because everything else is contractual.
Why did our financing go up $238,000 and refinancing that went down?
Part of it has to do when the principal payments, the loans are due. They increase like every year.
Do we make them a certain time every year, our refinancing payments?
Our
What we owe
bond
on the
payments,
bond
yes, we
payments?
make them twice a year.
Do you know, when is that?
Different ones are different.
Different ones at different dates, and I have a schedule in here for you, you'll see it. It's in your packet. If you go back, you'll see it. In your packet. I'm giving
I'm
you
just
all.
trying, we have one about every month or not?
No,
No.
twice a year, like usually May and November, or
They're different.
they're different. You'll see. We'll go to it. We're going to get to it in a minute. Okay. Transportation analysis. Let me pull that up. Okay. This schedule is showing you exactly what we paid year-to-date for our transportation contract. And there's 50 days left to pay that we have not paid because they have not been transporting our students. If we would have paid for the whole year, the amount would have been $6,080,000. And we get reimbursed at that at around 65%. We'll get 1 million. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. We pay about $6,080,000 for transportation. We still have 50 days left to pay them. And we've talked before about how we may need to pay them for some of their fixed costs. Because if we don't pay them, the state wants us to renegotiate the contracts.
Should this be done out there?
Pardon?
Should this be done in public?
Do you want to talk about this in the executive session?
I didn't know, I mean, it's a contract, go with it, I mean,
I would.
Okay,
contractual issue.
let's save this for later, but if I can just say that,
These are specific numbers, but I think if you spoke in generalities from PASBO, as far as the percentage that people are negotiating contracts, that would believe would be public. But once we get into our specific contracts, I would err on the side of Mr. Latham. But generalities, what we're hearing across the state with PASO and NRIU is that the settles are in between the 75 and 85% range. So, I mean, that's what I've been hearing, Marlene, or is that what you're hearing?
We've heard lower.
Lower, okay.
We've heard even a little bit lower. So we can talk about that in an executive session, what Rich and I are planning on doing, but...
I have a generality question.
Yeah.
You have a total of $6 million. You said we get reimbursed 65%.
No, that's not, the 65%, that number right there is if we would pay 65%. I think that's lowest.
Marlene, can I jump in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we are looking at, if we would have attended school for 177 days this year, we would have ended at $6 million mark. There are 50 days left to go, but just to give you an idea of the subsidy and how that would work, is there's a lot of numbers that work into it. So right now, when you said 65%, you're actually talking about the consumer price index, or the market value to aid ratio, which is 0.6909 for this year, which is 69%. So when you factor everything in, first of all, you have to find out what our market value is. And everything works for a year behind. So for the 18-19 school year, we just got our information for subsidy this month of what we're going to get paid for the 18-19 school year and what we're already getting paid. So when you find out your market value for a year, which for us is $1.4 billion, an important number of that in transportation is to find out what half a mil of the market value is for us, which is $732,000. Then you factor in the things that you always think about, how many students there are, non-pub students, hazardous road students, our mileage with students, our mileage without students, the age of vehicles, the capacity of vehicles, and so on. Then they give you your aid ratio, like I told you, which is 69% last school year. And then they give you your consumer price index, which another name for that would be like a cost of living type of thing, inflation number, which is 5.91 this year that works into. So when you figure all those in, then it comes up with the maximum allowable cost that the state determines that they will reimburse you for transportation. The maximum allowable cost last year was $5.2 million. So then you find out what the state will give you back from that. You would take that $5.2 million and divide it or multiply it by that 0.6909, the market value aid ratio. And then it comes up with what they refer to as the state share, which would be $3.6 million. And then the next number you have to find is the excess cost. So then you have to take your total approved cost, which I told you is $5.2 million, minus the state share, which would be the multiplication by 0.69, and then you would subtract the half mil market value that I told you at the beginning. Then you come up with the excess cost that the state will give us, which is $880,000. So the final number, to give you an idea, is not 69% of what we spend. It's 69% of the state share plus the excess cost. So when it is all said and done, from what we actually spend, and take last year's numbers, for example, $5.9 million, almost $6 million last year. The state share plus the excess cost, the state gave us $4.5 million. That was our actual subsidy. So that number is actually about 76% when you take the state share of the reimbursement plus the excess cost that they give you back. So we talk about 69% or whatever the cost index is in a given year, but it actually is more than that when you factor in the excess cost. So it's a really complicated formula, and it's not as easy as just to say, okay, we plan on spending $6,080,000, and we're just going to multiply that by 0.69, figure out how much the state is going to give us back. There's a lot more than that goes into it, if that makes sense, and that is enough.
So with that said, that's not what I was trying to show on this schedule. What I was trying to show on this schedule in particular was if we paid the 50 days that are left to pay them, it's 65%, and we get reimbursed for that. What would our savings be? And we would have $187,000 on this year's budget if we do that in transportation.
Well, my question would be, your total that I see per day of cost is $34,500. I'll take that by the 127 days we worked. And I know Rich said we might be at 76% with this cost index, but if we do 69% for reimbursement and keep it a couple percent low, I could be wrong, Rich is better at this, but we should be able to at least figure close what we would get in reimbursement.
No, your subsidy, your reimbursement is based on the amount of days. So normally you multiply it by 177, but if you multiply it by 127, that amount would be much less. So
right.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. You're spending less, but you're getting less back.
Right, but I want to know the difference between what I've spent and what I'm getting back compared to what my total spent and what I'm getting back.
Your total spent?
My total spent for 127 days and what I'm getting back. My total if I give out the money for 177 and what I'm getting back. I want to know what my difference is between those because I don't know if it's worth giving anything if you pay for the day.
If we
Am I right or am I?
If we do not renegotiate the contract and pay them something, we will not get our subsidy based on the full amount.
We're going to get it based on the days we provided.
Yes.
Okay? That's what I'm saying. I just need to know what the difference is. And maybe everybody does, maybe I'm crazy, but what we worked, the cost ratio to what it would be for the total cost ratio. Maybe that's something we need to think
there's no way to give you an exact number. But if you estimate it on past years, because transportation is the subsidy probably doesn't change, and usually doesn't from year to year. What would, I guess, a good way of doing it would be to take the last year, which was our approved cost was $5.2 million. You divide that by 177 days, then you would see technically what the approved per day would be.
Last year it cost us $1.4 million to run the transportation. You told us it was $5.9 million spent, $4.5 million reimbursement.
Okay,
So,
if you don't want a payment, this might answer your question. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rich. We have not paid them for 50 days. That represents 1.7 million. Okay? We don't have to pay them that, and we could have 1.7 million in costs this year, in savings costs. But next year, we're a year behind in getting our money for that. So when we go next year, and let's say we have a full $6 million worth of costs, if not more, because it goes up every year, and we only paid $4.3 million times 70%, we're going to be short next year because we're not getting subsidy for this year.
well, what did you save out of that money from the $4.3 million? Marlene, from the 4.3 million to the 6 million that you didn't do anything with, it's still there, what's the savings ratio compared to what you spent? That's the only thing I'm trying to figure,
would
maybe I'm
be-
missing it, but
Did you say it's 70%, about 70%, Rich?
Yes, this year it'll be 69, last year it was, I think, 69.2.
I mean, what I did was, maybe it's wrong, I took the 34,574, the daily cost, and took it by 127 days. We got $4.39 million, $4,390,000. What
Okay, here's the difference.
technically the contract would have cost us up for 127 days.
If we, Rich, correct me if I'm wrong on this.
You don't base the 69% on what we've paid them.
No,
You
I'm
base
not-
it on the incurred costs.
I'm not basing it on the 69%, I'm saying total cost, Rich. According to line number 1, 34,574.21 on line 1 is what it cost us a daily cost for transportation. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so if I take and it cost me 34,574 for 127 days, that's when it's going to tell me, without reimbursement, that's what it's going to tell me my total cost was for 127 days of transportation.
Well, if you want to do a reasonable rough estimate based on history, and take the $5.2 million divided by 177 days. And so you come up with about 29,000 a day times 127, and that would give you a rough estimate possibly of what the reimbursement would be like 3.7 million.
Right. That's what I mean, I'm throwing a reimbursement without even being, so I went high with 34,574 to give me a daily cost without reimbursement.
Well, Dave, what you could do is you could just take your 50 days left, and you ask what it would cost you for the other 50 days. It would be $1,728,710 we'd have to pay for the additional 50 days.
Yeah, so what's my reimbursement for the 127 compared to the,
Okay, if we got reimbursed, if we paid, if our contract, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, if we would, let's say there was no COVID and we were paying them, we'd be paying them an additional 1.78 million. And if we got reimbursed at 69%, we would get 1,192,000 back for a difference of that of $535,900 would be our cost of that. Okay? So that's where it would be.
Right.
So what we are proposing to do,
wait a minute, tell me that one more time, say that one
Okay.
more time.
we have left to pay our contractors for this year 1.7 million, 28,000 to be exact. If we got reimbursed, and this is a quick and dirty thing, so it's not that easy, it's sort of like those other formulas, they're long and involved. If we got reimbursed that at 69%, it would be 1.192 million. So the difference between what we would pay and what we got reimbursed, if we paid them everything right now, the cost to us is $535,000.
What do you have now that you didn't spend?
$1,728,000.
That you did not spend?
We did not
So
spend
if we
it.
reimbursed it, if we reimbursed $1 million, it would only cost us $500,000 more.
If we paid them $1.7 million to 8,
Mhm.
it would only cost us $535,000 right now, yes.
So we get to keep 5.
So we lose 5.
If you have $1 million and you give 5 out, you're gonna keep 5. Am I wrong?
No, you're right, it's still costing 1.1 million. to
Yeah,
get
it's costing you
500
1.1 million.
What Dave's saying, you're
Need
still
bigger
going to pay
truck.
$1.1 million.
Yeah, 1.1 million.
You said to pay them 1.1 million,
We'll get,
we'll get to keep 500,000.
no, that's all it cost us.
Well, we'll get 500,000 back, but it doesn't matter, it's still 500,000 coming off your million.
Right, right, 70% of that. I I found that's 22, 70% is 1.2. Marlene's went 69, it's 1.1, so you went 1.2. That's what it would cost us with the 69%. And what Marlene's saying, the difference between 1.1 and 1.7 that we're paying them is $500 and some thousand. But what you're saying is we don't give them the 1.7 million, we're saving that plus the 500,000.
We're not, doesn't
That's what
cost
you're
anything.
saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
That's the only thing I was trying to get to at the beginning, is I'm trying to get a ratio of where we're at.
You're going to have to decide what you want to do on that, because if we do not pay these contractors, will they be able to survive and be here in the fall? Because that's a lot of money them not getting, and they bought buses. You know, they still have costs that they have to pay, and they may not be able to do it. That's something we may have to talk in executive session about with. So
That's the only thing I was trying to get was what's the ratio difference, and that's still what I'm trying to get to. I mean, you're throwing $10 to get $4, that's what I'm trying to figure the difference.
yeah, but if we don't spend the $10, we may not have a building. We may not have bus contractors for next year.
I think you showed some stuff that said we may not be reimbursing the state also.
We just had, now keep in mind, this changes like almost hourly. We had a big transportation webinar yesterday from the state that went through and said we will get reimbursed for the whole year.
I think a few of the papers back here were held short on how many things from the state.
You're right.
You can only sit around and wait for the state to guarantee the money. I always say, who's the state? We are. You might as well just come take it out of your pocket now. The state doesn't have a tree.
That's something we're going to
We
have
need
to
to be
decide.
fiscally
Yes, that is
geared.
something we are going to have to decide. You will have to decide what you want to do. That's what I wanted to show
I mean,
you.
just take it out of my pocket now, don't wait till later.
So the whole purpose of this was to show you what we've spent to date, what's left to spend now, and most other school districts who have renegotiated the contracts are paying them at around, they're actually paying them around 80%.
I say this all the time, I don't think we need to worry about every other school. We need to worry about right here at Collinsville School District.
Okay, let me go to the next slide.
And I don't disagree with Marlene, I just can't figure that, that's why I was asking.
Okay, athletic savings from spring sports. I showed you that the other day. I sent you this schedule. Because we were 2 weeks into our spring season and the coaches have already worked, everybody who was working on March 13th still would get paid, so we have to pay all our spring supplemental salaries, even though they only worked 2 weeks. And this is what Mr. Evans and I came up with that we think we will save because we didn't have spring sports. So that's $166,000.
Maureen, my question is, what is general supplies and what is capital equipment? I hope we didn't buy $34,000 worth of diamond drive. We have, everything else is, we have artificial turf everywhere else except for baseball.
I'd have to look into specifically the details of all of that. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
What's capital equipment replacement, is that for, I hope it's not for hourly cost for a person to cut the grass and stuff, because he'd be there cutting grass and garden.
No, that would be,
Lawnmowers?
no.
Mr. Evans, just not to, I mean, can you just give us a couple examples out of those two categories? The general supply and the capital equipment? I think that's a valid question. If you can, not to put you on the spot, but if you have that, I'd appreciate it.
No, it's fine. The vast majority of purchases and athletics come out of minimum supplies. Equipment replacement, things like bleachers, football posts, scoreboard, things like like that. So that's what I'm over in that line item share.
Well, then what's other purchase technical services, Rick?
Say that again, what's the question?
Other purchase technical services.
Field preparation.
I don't know.
Remember, Rich, when we asked what was
He's
in
already
that
said
line?
field prep.
For the softball fields and for all the fields, the field preparation that they have to go and fix it up every year. Isn't that what's in that line?
We didn't buy any of that.
Yeah, so that's what that is.
All right, then what about the capital equipment replacement?
That's where he said,
That's what I was saying, those are big item purchases that don't happen very often. Those will code, words, features, things like that.
You just put that in the budget in case we need it, Rich. We haven't actually used them every year. You have that line item in the budget in case we need it.
correct.
It just moves around based on need from year to year. That item. This past year was middle school sports. The year before was total post features and so.
Mr. Evans, contract carriers are officials, not our coaches, correct?
Contract carriers is transportation. That's what's left over for the year in that item for athletic transportation.
All right, so you drew that down during the fall and the winter, and that's what was left over going into spring.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
How about the activities bus, Rich? Is that on that or is that separate?
Separate.
So activity buses are reimbursable cost under basic pupil transportation.
So that's not in there.
No.
So it's broken down, anything to and from school and activity trips, those are basic pupil transportation, and those are reimbursable. Anything else is within each building's school fund, whether it's elementary, swimming, whether it's field trips, or I guess field trips are paid by competition, things like that. In the case of athletics, it has its own line item for athletic transportation. If you're looking at their 515.
Hey, Rich, where's your officials at?
That's the top at 340.
Okay.
So there's about $10,000 left in that line item for the.
Okay, thank you.
The bond debt schedules would be the next thing. I've given this to you before to look at, and this is a listing of all our bond issues. You can see in the second column, I believe, Mr. Hanselli, you were asking when we make those payments. Those are the dates we make the payments, like on 11/15, 5/15, 8/15, 2/15. You can see for every bond issue it's different, but it's the same month and date every year. And we have an amortization schedule that we follow for each one of those bonds.
Marlene, I can't hear too good, but was you adding what Mr. McShane was telling us the other day at the meeting? Would that be added on if he shows us some savings?
I didn't put that in here yet.
Okay.
No, it's not in the budget.
That's what I was asking. All right, thank you.
So this is all the detail. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I've showed this to you before, but you can see that there should be state subsidies, if you look, of what, about 500,000, 400,000. It depends on the project reimbursement based on our market aid. Again, it's another one of these huge, long calculations of how much money we get back. So it depends on a project reimbursement rate at the time we issue the bond, that's the claim fund percentage. And you times that by the actual payment, times again by the estimated market value aid ratio that keeps decreasing every year. So this state subsidy amount of $505,000 is what was projected last year, but until, that is what I have Mrs. Rupert working on. I want to know the exact numbers of those for this year and next year. I don't know what it's going to be for next year. But this is the schedule. Everything in pink, the federal and state subsidy are not firmed up yet. The ABM lease is at the bottom. So the principal and interest on this will tie to what is put into our budget report for this year. This is all the detail that makes this up.
What's the number 4 bond? I thought that was the immediate bond.
What bond?
2013A, number 4, 1.8.
$2013A. Yeah, we took it out in 2013. There's a couple we're paying off this year. Like if you look at, column J, you can see an outstanding balance at June 30th, 2021, which I project on this column down here. You can see that we should pay off the 214B bond, and we should pay off the 2017 bond this year, next year. So there will actually be 2 that we're paying off. So after next year, you'll see that $820,000 payment that we made, that's a lot of money we will not have the following year.
And you say the number 5, the 112,000, that was the other one you said?
Yeah, the 2014B.
So both of those are about $1 million.
Yes, it's pretty good. It'll be paid off next year, so.
Does that help us this year for the budget?
No, because that's being paid off next year for the
If we pay them
budget.
off this year?
But then a year after it'll help.
If we paid them off,
Yeah.
would it help us this year? If we didn't pay them off next year, if we paid them off this year, would that help us for this year's budget or not? Or would that help us only for next year?
It would be more expense this year. It would be more cash going out this year that we weren't anticipating, but we could. If we don't have the cash flow. We don't have the cash flow to do it right now.
State's holding our money in
The
June.
state's holding our money, so that's not an option, really.
I'll
But,
talk to you later about it.
but I know, here's something though. If we take, and it's going to be on another slide that I'm going to show you later. If we take the bond financing that he said was going to be $880 and we don't use it for capital improvement and use it to pay that, that would save us $800,000.
Absolutely, that was my thought.
Yeah.
And none of those have penalties, correct? Pretty early, I just wanted to bring that out.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
There's no really payment penalties, some.
No.
Yeah, because they're expecting their principal, they don't care when they get it. I just wanted to confirm that, I knew what I was confirming, but thank you.
Okay.
Was there any others in there that are close or nothing else close? Is that the only 2?
Those are the only 2. Okay. Budgets by building and department. Okay. Let me get that for you and I'm going to show you what we did. You asked about the building budgets. I told you you're going to have more information that you take a look at. So, okay, here we go. This is everything but salaries. So the way the budgets are set up are obviously by function, by building. So you have the senior high. Starting at object number 300, that going on is everything but the salaries and benefits. So I'm showing you all the detail on every line item. And you can see based on the 2019-20 budget to this year's budget, we cut $11,346 from the high school budget of 3.3%. I'm not going to go line by line on this because we started from scratch. The way we do this is I have Mrs. Routson, I have Mrs. Rupert, myself. Sometimes they'll bring their secretaries. We go line by line with every building principal, every department head, what we think they're going to need, what they have to have. And I have notes on every single line on why it's like it is. So these
Can I
are...
ask you one that just jumps out?
Yeah, what?
Industrial words, mileage, we went from I don't know what it was, $15,600 to $5,000. How do we have $15,600 mileage?
That's in the Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way, that's a class course that we offer, and the trainings for that are every so many years, and they're expensive, and because we would require our teachers to be trained in that Project Lead the Way for that class. That's what that expense is.
We don't have it this year. We've already been trained.
We don't have
How
anyone
many
that
teachers go?
I don't know how many went last.
It's a huge part of our science and engineering curriculum.
It just jumped out at me.
Yeah.
$10,000.
And that's what that is.
That's what that is.
$15,000 a mile.
And some things we don't spend, like the original equipment, okay? We put it in there because you do not know when something's going to break. Like, I forget which school it was, but they needed a laminator. And they were begging me, please let me get the laminator. We use it every day and it broke. Like, I'm like, you can get a laminator. Like, they can't function without certain equipment, and they're so worried. You know, if they didn't spend it this year, we're going to take away the $10,000. But no, we have to, because on average, that's what they've spent over the last 3 or 5 years. Because when we meet with everyone, I have the last, 5 years of their expenses in that category at actual. So that's what we do the budget on. So that was the high school. The middle school, you can look at their costs if you go down to the bottom. She reduced her budget by $13,504, which is a 9.6% reduction from the middle school. Now, keep in mind, I didn't put any fluff in these budgets, again. Elementary schools, and I'm sorry, these might be small for you to read, but I couldn't print it out any other way. Springfield,
When it says covered by grants, I just want to make that clear to everybody, the viewers and to our board. Covered by grant is our Title IV for that. That's Project Lead the Way is in Title IV, so that's not out of our general operating budget, but still, it's your funds that you've received through Title IV.
so if you take out the difference of the Project Lead the Way, which is getting funded by a grant, she only increased her budget at Springfield by $1,250, which was 3.9%. West Crawford, again, I'm taking out the Project Lead the Way. She only increased it by $2,950, which was a 6% increase. She needed the new laminators. That's the one who begged me to let her get a laminator, or she wouldn't have had that increase. I think a laminator is $3,000. So that just goes to show you how one purchase can just throw off a budget. There's not that much money they're spending. When we say a whole elementary school is only spending around $50,000 for all their supplies, software mileage, maintenance and repairs, anything that they need, that's not a lot of money when you look at the classrooms and the teachers. So the total elementary, if you take out the...
Marlene,
Yes?
is the small math included in that?
The small labs is going away next year. I wrote a letter canceling it.
They're not being used at all, correct?
Correct.
We own the
We own the
stuff.
equipment.
Yeah, so
We're
if
gonna
we
try
want to
to
use it,
sell
we
it.
can use it, but we're not paying the licensing fee and the fees associated with it, we're not paying, but we own the equipment. And if we have intellectual property that a teacher has, their intellectual property is their lesson plans. So we own their intellectual property, and if they want to go do that lesson plan again, they are very well permitted to, but we don't have the maintenance and upkeep and those continuing costs with these small labs. Is that, Mr. Harshman, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Did we get the small labs through a grant?
Yes. I
We
think,
did?
When you bought them before,
How we got them? I think we got them through a grant.
I think we got it through a grant a number of years ago. Federal.
I think it was federal money was used to pay for the majority of
So
those.
just so you don't get rid of them, just hold on to them forever. That's something you own. In 20 years from now, when they want to know where they're at, you better find out where they're at so you can tell them. That's how federal grant works.
I just want to see it. Nickel
Okay.
-3.
Marlene,
Jen went
the
negative.
software on a yearly basis was $55,000 of it.
We're going to go through the software
Okay.
in a minute. It's going to be probably my next slide. So basically for all the elementary schools, we've only increased it, if you take out the grant again, it's like $24,000. They don't forgive it, like $25,000 for all 4 schools. I thought that was really good.
Mrs. Grinnell,
Yes.
we looked at this and I commented before how I thought it was beneficial to everybody. -3 at the high school, -10 almost, -9.6 at CAMS, and then cumulative between those 6. Could you help me out, cumulative between those 6?
What's this again?
So I see that Caldwell High School cut their operating budget, their outside salary, by -3.3. You shared that -9.6, Mrs. Sanzone and Bill were able to go down -9.6. So
Right.
between those two, we're at negative, what do you got?
13.9.
-3 and -9 is -13 if you had 0.3.6. So -13, and then we're at where high school, the 4 elementaries went up about 1%.
Went up about 15%, but it's a very small number.
Yeah.
It seems like a large percentage, but it's
Gotcha.
not a lot of dollar amount
What's
for that. It was $24,000 worth of increases in the whole budget if you take out the grant.
Yeah, so $11,000 from the high school, $13,000 down from the CAMS. Good. Thank you. And then, yeah.
Okay. The only other one I can show you right now is budget by department by the admin offices is on that.
Where's CTC on this?
Pardon?
Is CTC on this?
No.
We have their
Oh,
budget
you have it
separate.
there.
We have their budget separate, yeah.
Thank you.
Office of the Superintendent, he decreased his budget by $1,000, which is 7%. Again, if you look at what he has to spend, it's not a lot of money. Curriculum, she decreased her budget by 9.8%, $52,100. It went from $531,000 to about $480,000 in curriculum costs. And that's based on her textbook cycles and curriculum cycles. The business office, we decreased our budget by $2,300 from $85,500 down to $83,200, which is 2.7%. Human resources, we increased it by $5,000. That's mainly for drug testing and physicals for new employees.
Marlene, do we have this in our packet?
You know, I might not have printed that off. I might not have, I can get this for you. I can email this whole thing.
You have the cafeteria up there you're gonna show.
What?
Cafeteria.
Cafeteria.
Food service. I didn't see anything.
No, I don't
in
have food
cafeteria.
service. It's in a totally separate fund. It's not in our general budget.
Oh,
Last year, food service made about $200,000.
last year they what?
Made about $200,000. If you looked at the audit report, from what we got reimbursed for the money, but there are certain things we do not allocate to that. We don't allocate any garbage, we don't allocate utilities, we do not allocate maintenance men, which we could. If you think about it, so it's just mainly their food cost, employees, and what we get back from the state. It made $200,000, but if I was really going to do a cost accounting for it and allocate it properly,
They're doing pretty good because when Mr. Maddox was here, he used to have to pay for the electricity, the maintenance man, everything that was involved with the cafeteria. They come out of buildings and grounds and maintenance. I'm glad they don't have to pay.
they won't allow me to do that anymore.
Electric.
No, they stopped that.
Where was it?
And
It was in maintenance before?
they always took they take everything still out of maintenance.
Yeah, we don't charge the food service.
We don't charge food service.
No, you never did.
Okay.
Okay. Security, he decreased his budget by $9,950. That's probably some type of training. That was a 30% decrease. Again, these numbers aren't real big. These administrators don't have a lot to work with. Technology, we increased it by $7,483, which is less than a 1% increase. Transportation, we increased it by $130,000, which is about a 2.1% increase. Athletics, we increased it by $41,657, which is a 10.6% increase. For a total of all the administrative departments of $118,810, which is a 1.4% increase. Now, I do not have, when this is all said and done, I will have the cyber special education buildings and grounds on here, which are not, the buildings and grounds is done in the budget, but I haven't had time to put it on here to summarize it to show you all.
I can give a little bit of preliminary cyber, if you want me to interject now. I don't want to steal your...
Yeah, no, go ahead, that's fine.
Just some preliminary by, we wrote a cease and cease our relationship with Seneca Valley. In doing that, that will save us, you know, I can just tell you, in our fall semester, we gave them $130,755,000. In the spring, $73,905 for 18-19. Okay, so that's roughly $205,000. By going straight to Edgenuity and cutting out Seneca Valley, and they were a great partner while we were fledgling, and now that we are up on our own 2 feet, we're still going to be about $60,000 to Edgenuity. Also in the cyber budget is the cyber coordinator, and also in the cyber budget is the stipends. So for the 18-19 school year, again, approximately, we're approximately $258,000 in cyber stipends. I don't see a decrease in that because, you know, it's going to be more people because we worked diligently with CAEA as a great partner, and we worked to spread that to more employees rather than a handful of employees. So I do not anticipate the amounts going down for that, but the savings will be in the Seneca Valley contract. So
the savings will also be, Mr. Bradley, in us not having to send them somewhere, too, right?
well, that
students going somewhere else, how much would that cost?
it would be for special education students, $24,000 per student. It's $5,000. It's, you know, approximately $11,000 per general education. On average, ours is about $5,000 for our in-house. Now, we can't stop somebody because they have a legal right to go, but I tell you, our guidance teams at every level, when they get the first whiff of a family that says, I believe that cyber education may be the right route for me, we tell them the strength of our program and the fact that you will still earn a Connellsville diploma, you will still be eligible for all social activities, all, everything, the musical, everything. Whereas if you go to a cyber charter school, you are legally allowed to participate in interscholastic athletics, but that's about it. You have no right to go to a prom. You're not, absolutely not earning our diploma. So, there are some strengths. We don't see a lot of people coming back once they're in a outside cyber, but it's stopping the people from going. Yeah, that's a great point. So I know that, we have a very strong and vibrant cyber committee, and they work very hard to make sure that we get a lot of, our students that is the right model for to go there.
Any other questions on that? Okay.
And our numbers in 18, 19, we're about the same, 250 students, 180 had general, and 68 were IPs. And we don't see them being identified once they go into our cyber school, where we see that a lot in cybers, in the charters. They get identified as special education once they're in their school district, in their cyber charter. Thank you.
Okay. The next chart I want to show you is our outside special education placement costs. Now, this isn't completely done yet. I've gone over it twice with Mr. D'Amico. And what you're not seeing is we have went through every one of our outside special ed placements and listed what child goes there, starting when, how much we should be billed, and came up with this amount. You can see the number of students between each facility. For example, Highlands is only autistic children. The WPSP is the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf. You can see we have 6 children there at a cost of around $45,000, $232 for the school. The total of all our outside placements for special ed is $1.746 million. And it keeps going up. And we keep trying to bring some kids back in-house and talk about trying to bring them into a contained classroom or whatever we can do, but we're working on that. So I just wanted to show you how much of the budget is outside placement. Now, part of the reason why cyber is not complete is I think this is just the cost of the facility, and we have to transport the kids there. So there's a whole transportation cost component to that, and we did this so long ago, and I've been working on so many things since COVID, I can't remember if the transportation was included in this or not, and I do not think it is. And we have to go through it in more detail, but it's not only the cost of the facility, but of getting them there. And that's quite expensive also when you're driving kids to Pittsburgh in vans.
Marlene, that not include the cost.
It does not?
No, it does not.
Okay.
And we also have students that attend adult classes. We need to add that.
Thank you.
Marlene, on the other hand, transportation for those students was already added in your total cost. That's part of that reimbursable. So that money is included in there.
Do we budget for that in transportation, or does special ed have their own line for transportation that we charge?
No, it's all included. It's basic pupil transportation that is reimbursable. So it's all in that big number. It's million.
But we're going to need to know that for Act 16 costs.
Yeah, we give that. That's a separate report that we give you each year.
Okay.
We know that.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks. Annual software contract renewals. Okay, here we go for that one. You've seen this, but we've changed it. This is an ongoing process. I'm going to tell you what we did with this list. Here we go. If you look at the software list, and you've seen this a number of times, but what I did is if you look at column E, F, and G, column E is what we paid for this year.
We don't see the letters, Mrs. Grinnell, but
Okay.
if you could
The
just help me.
1920 amount,
Thank you.
I'm highlighting them up there.
Thank you.
If you look up one,
Yep.
up there. The 1920 amount is what we paid for this year. What we anticipate spending in the next budget year, and I took it out one more year. This lists you every single piece of software that we use across the district, what it's for, the period it covers, and where it is in the budget, so that I can, I want to take this and be able to then track it back and make sure and double check it that we got every piece of software in the right budget by department. So that was never done before, and that way we won't miss anything and we will know. When you look at a department's budget and its curriculum and you say software, and if you'd say, Marlene, what's in that line item, I could go right to this and it should tie. That has not been tied out yet. It might have at one point, but it hasn't been checked lately. So that's another item we have to finish out for this budget. But anything in yellow up on the screen, I might not have printed in yellow for you to save color copy charges.
It's highlighted.
Okay,
Marlene,
yes.
down there at that alma, could you explain to me why we paid $49,000 for that? And back in September of 17, we had a contract, 5-year contract for $44,629 a year. Why are we paying $5,000 more for that? We have a 5-year contract. I don't understand that. Anybody know the answer to that?
I don't know what happened in the past. I know what we paid and what the contract says.
Yeah, that's in the agenda back in September 17. We paid $44,628 a year for 5 years. That's a 5-year contract. We're paying $49,490. Where'd the other 5 come from?
Let me get to that in a minute. We can look that up. But the yellow highlighted, if you look on the screen, anything in
September.
yellow, we are
27.
eliminating it for next year.
17.
2017.
Yeah. It was a 5-year contract at $44,628 a year.
Mr. Martre, the first year was a trial basis. We didn't run the full year on it. It was $18,300. The payment for the 18-19 school year was $38,070. In the 19-20 school year, we saw some implementation fees added, so it jumped to $67,790. And then every year from this year moving forward is $49,490.
Well, part of that 67 was which is gone now, was that student information system setup and fees. That was
Right.
$18,000.
Yes.
I have that highlighted, yes. We paid for that for this year, but we won't have that next year.
Yeah, because that's all it stated in the agenda that year. They didn't give you those other details that he just gave, Kevin gave us here.
So if you look at the 1920 amount for this year, our total software is $597,000. We've cut it by $91,000 for next year, which would be $505,000. We actually, that was the net. I actually increased the software by $2,275. That is the scanning software I wanted to buy for the ScanTech, which we talked about. I added that in, hopefully you'll approve it. And then we eliminated actually $93,000 worth of software costs. Mr. Ghost, met with me numerous times. We met with Mrs. Rupert, with Cherie. We've spoke to teachers. We sent out a survey to all the teachers of what software they use all the time. We talked to the principals, and everything in here made the cut that it is being used. They did not want it to go away. And that was based on the teachers and principals' approval, so this is what is remaining on all that. So that's...
That all come out of technology?
That all comes out of, no. If you look at the budget code, Mr. Panzelli, you'll see that they're charged to different departments. Like, for example, let's take impact applications. That's coming out of the senior high athletic budget. You can see where it's being charged. Athletics, the CTC, human resources, whether it's district-wide, food service, security software, curriculum. And again, I said, I'm going to take this and tie it. We never had it in what budget code it was. I made Mrs. Rupert go through and specifically identify where we were charging it in the budget, because that's the only way to get it correct. And now, to take it a step further, again, we have to tie it back to make sure it's correct. It's little things like that we have not had time to do with everything that has been going on. So that's the annual software cost.
How about that learn by doing down there? We pay almost $3,400 for that, and that's free for the college board. That's a question back. We're paying $33,344.
$3,000?
$3,344, and that's free. We can get that through college board.
I can talk to Nick Wozniak about that, and we can make a note of that and talk.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to pick up some more money, I mean, it's free. Why should we want to pay $3,000 out for it? That's something we ought to look at.
Okay, I will talk with Nick about that. So that's our software. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay. I want to show you something really cool. We received this. This is fun. We received a link from PASBO where, let me go through this. Everyone's so concerned about the impact on our local revenues and what this COVID is doing to property taxes, to earned income taxes. So the state got together and they looked at all of our assessed value, our income, you know how they're good with all those indexes and everything they do, and they put together this map with all the school districts shown. And it's saying, and what it's saying that worst case scenario, all the school districts are going to lose $1.045 billion in revenue. The very least they're going to lose is $874 million in local revenue. If you go down here to Connellsville, under the first scenario, it says we're going to lose $1.6 million to the best case to almost $3 million.
All
And
they
if
gotta
you
do is
look
go
what,
to Walmart, they'll get that.
pardon?
Just go to Walmart, they'll get all that.
So based on what we did separately by looking at everything, if you look what I budgeted in local revenues, it comes out to that. So we were right in line with what the state experts. So I thought that was kind of neat that they put this all together. Capital expenditure budget. This doesn't go into our general budget. This has to do with spending the money in our capital reserve fund. And let me get that out. I'm just going to show you this, and we can talk about this in a Buildings and Grounds Committee, because we're getting into a lot of detail now. And I've given this to look at before. Let me find where it is, project list. What I did was I went through and I actually toured a number of the schools. Some I didn't actually make it there, but I met with all the principals, buildings and grounds, talked to a number of you. And anything that we thought needed complete, not including a whole renovation of DT, we listed everything and I put down what I would like to see get done in 2021 or moving forward. And some items that we've put off as deferred maintenance, it's actually just a deferred maintenance. We shouldn't be charging that to a capital project. If we need to repair a sidewalk and it costs us $5, that should be an expense. We don't want to depreciate that over another 30 years or whatever. So, for example, the rubber mulch in the playgrounds, I don't want to take that out of the capital reserve. I mean, I could take it out, but that would go in an expense column in our budget. But you can see district-wide, we have listed the track, the tennis court resurfacing. I won't go into detail. They need an auditorium lift, 2 new tractors, a new van. In the fourth column, you can see what we actually completed this year. We purchased a maintenance and it's a security vehicle. What else did we complete? We replaced all the bathroom stalls at Dunbar Township, retiled the floor at Dunbar Township. There were some costs that were just coming out of maintenance, such as the ramps going into the trailers at DT. We've cleaned out a lot of the old equipment, cleaning up the leaves. I have it all listed here.
The Pringle switch was 40-some thousand in just for.
Yeah, where is that? That's down there, the Pringle switch. We did that this year. Springfield, I did a walkthrough with Mrs. Reminiscence. We went through everything. There's some really bad sidewalks that need replaced. It would be great if we could do it this summer because for the handicapped kids, I think they could fall. It's really starting to crumble out there.
How old is that school?
It's not that old.
2003.
Pardon?
2003.
2003. These are my best guess estimates.
We have the VOTEC look at those, and I know we're not in school now.
What's that?
Sidewalks.
We could have them do it.
No matter where else they're good.
Yeah, we could. So you can look at all of these, but if you come down to the bottom, it totals $4,399,000. The majority of that is in Dunbar Township, where I have that we need a new roof, a security vestibule, a number of items. We've gone through this before. New windows and blinds. If we could get some of that accomplished, that would be great. $2.5 million in Dunbar Township is allocated to that. We've got some painting done there. I think it's really helped with the cafeteria. We got rid of that old dark wallpaper and they painted it a bright color. So the principals seem really pleased that we're taking an initiative to get that cleaned up. So it's starting to look really nice with the new bathrooms there. So this is what, so far we did $738,000 this year. There's more to be added to that. This hasn't been updated in about a month or so, but I know we paid more for some more stalls at Dunbar Township out of this year's budget. And again, we have about another $4.3 million, and we have that sitting in capital reserve fund.
We don't have a capital reserve fund line item anymore, do we?
No, it's a separate budget.
No, I mean, 2 years ago, we had $100,000 or whatever to do repairs and do stuff. We don't even have that anymore.
I have it in the buildings and ground budget. There's an amount there.
There is a capital reserve account other than the one from the refund.
Yes, there's another one that has how much money in it. I have it somewhere. I could get that for you, but we have a small amount of money, maybe $1 million.
No, right.
200.
Between 150 and 200,000.
Okay.
between 150 and 200,000.
Because I think the 2 years ago, we spent a decent amount of money
Yeah,
on that.
Yeah,
We never replenished any back in it.
no, we didn't. Okay, so that's the deferred maintenance. Try to get through the rest of this, there shouldn't be that much left to do. Let's look. The last thing I have before executive session is the CTC budget. And that should be in your pack. This came right out of our budget software, so I do not have a slide for this. We went from $4,407,000 to $4,465,000. So it hasn't been increased that much. I can go through details of that at a later time if you want to go through it, but I just wanted to give you a quick detail. I have, again, we went through this line by line item with Mr. James. There are a couple things he would like to have. I think I put it on the capital budget, which is mainly a building to house all the equipment we have. A pole building to keep the heavy equipment that we are using for our heavy machinery program out of the weather. Oh, okay. Then I have two other items for you. Should I stop sharing? Can I stop sharing? The other items I wanted to show you in detail. I don't have a slide for it. I'm sorry. Just a couple items at the very end of the back. The first one is the Chromebook refresh schedule. I know you've seen this a number of times, but I wanted to put it with the budget information. You can see that basically every year we replenish 5th grade and 9th grade every year. When a child goes into 5th grade, they get a new Chromebook, and in 9th grade, they get a new Chromebook to use for the rest of the time. But for kindergarten through 4th grade, every year we replace it. So it is on a 5-year cycle. So we replace it on a 5-year cycle for all the elementary schools. And they should last 5 years. Cost of that is approximately $230,000 a year. We will not pay for that from capital expense. That will be budgeted every year in our budget going forward. Because that is an expense, it's not something we want to finance for 30 years. The other schedule I wanted to show you was something I thought you might like to see. And what I did was I took all the athletics and I took all their specifically identifiable costs, like their coaches, would be assigned to that sport, their officials, their supplies. I took all their direct costs, and then I took the cost of our athletic department and costs that had to be shared among all the sports. And this is for both girls and boys combined. I didn't really separate it. But what this shows you, if you allocate the cost of the athletics, you have 900, this was based on last year. This year I couldn't do it obviously because of COVID, but on average you had 911 kids participating in athletics, and it cost us $913 per child. But if you look, and you look at band and the musical, there's 200 in the musical, we're only paying $129 for a child to be in the musical. We're paying $291 for a child to be in the band. The cheerleaders are quite expensive. We only have 30 cheerleaders, and the costs were $1,171 per cheerleader. Soccer was $1,027 for soccer. Basketball was $977 per child. There's 40 in basketball. There's 19 in golf for $1,125. There's 45 in football for $1,644 a kid to participate in football. And in track, there's 101 kids participating in junior high track of $867. So I thought that was pretty neat when you look at it that way and see how many kids participate.
It's just
High school, yeah. And that's all I have. If you have any questions on anything, we can take a break. We're going to adjourn and go then into executive session, if that's okay. Take a 10-minute break.
Sure, fine,